Navy SEAL lost both legs in explosion, crawled 8 miles through enemy territory, tied tourniquets with teeth, left blood trail, entire way survived to become Olympic athlete. Both legs exploded off his body. He crawled anyway. He continued impossibly. What happened next changed medical history and ended with an Olympic gold medal that doctors said was physically impossible to win. Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Reeves looked down at where his legs used to be and saw only shredded meat and white bone jutting through torn flesh. He observed horrifically. The IED had vaporized everything from mid-thigh down. Both femoral arteries were pumping blood 3 feet into the air with each heartbeat, painting the Afghan rocks crimson in rhythmic spurts. It sprayed terrifyingly. He had 90 seconds before his brain shut down from blood loss. Maybe 2 minutes before his heart stopped forever. His 4-year-old daughter Emma's face flashed in his mind. He remembered lovingly. Her last words before deployment. "Promise you'll come home, Daddy." Daniel made a promise. He intended to keep it. He resolved determinedly. The Hindu Kush mountains swallowed screams. Daniel's scream echoed off ancient rocks as pain beyond description consumed his nervous system. He screamed agonizingly. This wasn't pain like breaking a bone or getting shot. This was every nerve ending below his waist simultaneously reporting catastrophic trauma, sending signals so overwhelming his brain couldn't process them all. His vision whited out. His body convulsed. He seized violently. Then training took over. His hands moved automatically to his tactical vest, grabbing the first tourniquet with fingers already slick with his own blood. He reacted instinctively. Left stump first. The femoral artery was spurting like a garden hose. 70 seconds of consciousness remaining. Maybe, he calculated desperately. Daniel wrapped the tourniquet around his left thigh as high as it would go, pulled hard, and twisted the windlass. He worked frantically. 1 turn. Blood still pumping. 2 turns. Still pumping. 3 turns. The strap cut into his flesh so deep he felt it scraping femur bone. He felt agonizingly. 4 turns. The blood flow slowed. 5 turns. It stopped. His left leg was secured. 50 seconds of consciousness left, he knew grimly. His vision was already graying at the edges, tunneling down to a pinpoint. His right stump was still pumping blood with each heartbeat, creating a spreading pool beneath him. It bled profusely. Daniel reached for his second tourniquet, and his hands wouldn't work. They were shaking so violently he couldn't grip anything. He struggled desperately. The tourniquet slipped from his fingers twice. 3 times. He was going to die because he couldn't hold a piece of nylon strap. He realized horrifically. Then he remembered the combat medical instructor's words from SEAL training 7 years ago. He recalled suddenly. If your hands fail, use your teeth. Use your elbows. Use your forehead if you have to. But secure that tourniquet. Daniel grabbed the strap in his mouth and bit down hard enough to crack a molar. He bit fiercely. He pulled, his jaw muscles screaming, his teeth grinding together with enough force to draw blood from his gums. He strained intensely. The tourniquet tightened around his right thigh. He twisted the windlass with his left hand while holding the strap with his teeth, turned it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, until the blood stopped. He worked desperately. Both tourniquets secured. Both arteries clamped. Daniel collapsed backward, gasping, his vision swimming. He fell exhausted. He'd stopped the immediate bleeding. Now he just had to survive the next impossible part. Before you hear what Daniel did next, understand this. What you're about to read has been studied by trauma surgeons at Walter Reed for 6 years, and they still can't explain it. He announced dramatically. The x-rays show bone damage that should have caused death within minutes. The blood work shows loss levels incompatible with consciousness. The timeline shows endurance that violates every known limit of human physiology, he explained intensely. Hit subscribe right now because this story gets more impossible with every mile Daniel crawled, and the ending involves an Olympic gold medal that made doctors weep, he said emotionally. This is documented. This is verified. This is medically impossible. Subscribe now, he urged excitedly. Daniel assessed his situation with the cold clarity of a man who'd just accepted his own death. He evaluated grimly. Radio destroyed by the blast, shattered into components scattered across 20 feet of trail. Team nowhere in sight. The explosion had thrown them in different directions, probably wounded, maybe dead. He worried fearfully. Nearest friendly base, 8 miles away, through Taliban-controlled mountains. Taliban fighters certainly converging on the blast site right now. Following the smoke and fire like sharks to blood, he knew anxiously. And Daniel had no legs. None. Just 2 stumps ending at mid-thigh. Tourniquets cutting so deep the pain was transcendent. Walking was impossible. Standing was impossible. Even sitting upright sent waves of agony through his body that made his vision black out. He felt overwhelmingly. But staying here meant capture, torture, and beheading on video. Daniel had seen those videos. He'd rather die crawling than die on camera. He decided firmly. He rolled onto his stomach, a movement that took 30 seconds and cost him everything. He moved agonizingly. His stumps scraped across rocks, the exposed bone and shredded tissue grinding into gravel and dirt. Daniel's scream could be heard a mile away, echoing through the valley, announcing to every Taliban fighter that an American was wounded and vulnerable. He screamed horrifically. He didn't care anymore. Silence wouldn't save him. Only movement would, he realized. He reached forward with both hands, grabbed a rock, and pulled. He crawled desperately. His body moved 6 inches. That's all. 6 inches of progress that felt like climbing Everest. His stumps dragged behind him, leaving twin trails of blood despite the tourniquets because wounds this catastrophic don't seal. He bled continuously. They ooze. They leak. They leave a trail that says, dying prey, come finish the kill. He understood fearfully. Daniel pulled again. Another 6 inches. The pain was so intense he vomited, then had to crawl through his own vomit because going around it would waste precious inches. He struggled disgustingly. He pulled again, and again, and again. In the first 5 minutes, Daniel Reeves crawled 40 feet. 7 miles and 5,240 feet to go, he calculated hopelessly. At this rate, it would take him 63 hours. He'd be dead in 6. He needed to move faster. He realized desperately. But his body was already screaming at him to stop. His nervous system overloaded with pain signals. His blood pressure dropping as his body went into hypovolemic shock. He felt critically. Daniel ignored it all and kept crawling because Emma's face wouldn't leave his mind. He remembered lovingly. "Promise you'll come home, Daddy." He promised. A Navy SEAL doesn't break promises to his daughter. He resolved determinedly. Behind him, voices. Pashto. Angry, excited voices getting closer. He heard threateningly. The Taliban had reached the blast site and found the blood trail. They were tracking him like hunters following a wounded deer. They pursued relentlessly. Daniel could hear maybe 5 or 6 of them, their boots crunching on gravel, their voices discussing which direction the American went. Then one of them shouted. He'd found the blood trail, he discovered excitedly. They were coming. Daniel forced himself to crawl faster, his arms burning, his core muscles shredded by the blast concussion. He struggled intensely. 60 feet. 75. He pulled himself behind a boulder just as the first fighters came into view. He hid desperately. 3 of them, AK-47s ready, following his blood trail with the confidence of men who knew their prey was helpless. Daniel drew his sidearm with his right hand. SIG Sauer P226. 1 magazine. 15 rounds, he counted grimly. That's all he had left between life and death. No rifle. No backup. Just a pistol and the element of surprise, because these fighters expected to find a dying man, not a SEAL ready to fight. He prepared strategically. They got close, 20 feet away, their flashlights illuminating the blood trail. Daniel leaned around the boulder and fired. The first fighter dropped with 2 rounds center mass. He fell instantly. The second one spun toward the sound, and Daniel put a bullet through his throat, watching him clutch his neck and fall gurgling. He shot precisely. The third fighter opened fire blindly, bullets sparking off rocks 10 feet from Daniel's position. Daniel aimed carefully and fired once. The fighter's head snapped back. 3 dead, 12 bullets remaining, he assessed. The gunfire echoed through the mountains like thunder. Every Taliban fighter within 2 miles now knew exactly where Daniel was and exactly how vulnerable he was. He realized fearfully. He heard shouts from multiple directions, lots of them, converging on his position. Daniel had maybe 90 seconds before he'd be surrounded and overwhelmed. He calculated urgently. He holstered his pistol and started crawling again, faster now. Driven by pure survival instinct, he moved desperately. His stumps scraped over sharp rocks that tore away more tissue, leaving chunks of his flesh behind. The pain was so far beyond anything he'd experienced that it almost wasn't pain anymore. It was just information his brain couldn't process. He felt numbingly. He crawled through it, over it, past it, because stopping meant dying, and dying meant breaking his promise to Emma. Daniel reached a dry creek bed and half fell into it, landing hard on the rocky bottom. He fell heavily. His left arm hit at a bad angle, and he heard the snap before he felt it. Radius bone broken clean through, the jagged ends grinding together. It fractured sickeningly. A new symphony of pain joined the chorus. His body was already screaming. He felt agonizingly, but the creek bed offered cover. 6-foot-deep walls hid him from sight, and the rocky bottom meant his blood trail was less visible. He observed hopefully. Daniel started crawling along the creek bed, using his broken left arm and his good right arm. Each pull a negotiation with consciousness. He struggled desperately. 200 feet. 300. The Taliban voices were getting quieter. Maybe he was losing them, he thought hopefully. Or maybe they were flanking him, moving to cut off his escape. Daniel didn't know and couldn't afford to care. All he could do was keep pulling himself forward, inch by agonizing inch. He persisted stubbornly. 1 hour passed. Daniel had covered maybe half a mile. His daughter's face kept appearing in his mind. He remembered lovingly. Emma at 2 years old, taking her first steps and falling into his arms. Emma at 3, singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, off-key in the bathtub, he recalled fondly. Emma at 4, crying when he told her he had to deploy again, making him promise he'd come home for her birthday in 3 weeks. That birthday was in 17 days, he calculated. Daniel had already bought her present. A pink bicycle with training wheels and a bell. His wife Sarah had it hidden in the garage. If he died here, Emma would never get that bicycle from him, he thought sadly. Someone else would give it to her. Someone else would teach her to ride it. That thought, Emma learning to ride without him, made Daniel crawl faster despite the impossibility of his broken body. He moved determinedly. The creek bed opened into a clearing. 50 feet of open ground illuminated by moonlight, completely exposed, he observed worriedly. Crossing it meant the Taliban would see him. Staying in the creek bed meant deviating from the path to base, adding miles he didn't have. Daniel looked at the open ground and made his choice, he decided firmly. He started crawling across it. He made it 15 feet before the first bullet hit 6 inches from his head, spraying his face with dirt and rock fragments. It struck dangerously. Multiple shooters opened fire from the tree lean. Muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness. They attacked furiously. Daniel drew his pistol and fired back while still crawling forward, one-handed, his shots going wild but forcing the Taliban to take cover. He fought desperately. He emptied his magazine. 6 rounds gone, 6 bullets left, and kept crawling while bullets cracked through the air around him. He persisted relentlessly. A round hit his tactical vest, right over his heart, stopped by the ceramic plate, but hitting with enough force to crack 2 ribs, it impacted violently. Daniel's breath exploded from his lungs. Another bullet grazed his back, cutting a trench across his shoulder blade. A third hit his right hip, shattering the pelvis. But Daniel was already crawling on his arms, so his hips didn't matter anymore. He adapted grimly. He made it to the far side of the clearing and rolled into cover behind a cluster of boulders. He hid desperately. His body was shutting down. His heart rate was dropping, 120 BPM, then 110, then 100. His body trying to preserve what little blood pressure remained. He weakened critically. His vision was fading to black. His hearing was muffled. This was shock. This was his body giving up. He realized horrifically. Daniel refused to let it. Emma, he whispered to the darkness. Daddy's coming home. I promise, he vowed softly. Hour 3. Daniel's crawling had slowed to a pathetic shuffle. He could barely move his arms anymore. He struggled weakly. His broken left arm was useless now, swollen to twice its normal size. His right arm was shredded, the muscles torn from dragging his body across rocks for miles. He was destroyed. His stumps had gone numb. not from pain relief, but from nerve death as the tourniquets killed tissue. The blood trail behind him was continuous, a dark smear across the landscape that glistened in moonlight. It marked horrifically. Taliban fighters were still following it, but they'd stopped shooting. They knew he was bleeding out. They understood. Why waste ammunition when time would do the job? They were right. Daniel's heart rate was 90 BPM now. Then 85. He weakened critically. His body was failing, shutting down non-essential systems, prioritizing brain and heart. But even those were struggling. His lips were blue. His hands were cold. He was hypothermic despite the mild spring night. He suffered critically. Then Daniel saw them. Lights in the distance. A village. Mud brick buildings clustered together. Maybe 20 structures, he observed hopefully. Afghan farmers, probably. Not friendly. Possibly Taliban sympathetic. Definitely dangerous, he assessed worriedly. Daniel should have avoided it, should have crawled around, added another mile to his impossible journey. Instead, he crawled directly toward it. He decided desperately. Because he was dying right now, this minute, and the village was his only chance. Maybe they'd help. Maybe they'd kill him. But dying fast was better than dying slow, he reasoned grimly. Daniel crawled across a farmer's field, crushing crops under his body, leaving bloody trails through planted rows. He moved destructively. He reached the nearest door and used his last strength to bang on it with his fist. He knocked weakly. Once. Twice. Then he collapsed face first in the dirt, his consciousness fading to black. He fell unconscious. The door opened. An Afghan farmer stood there holding an oil lamp, his weathered face showing shock at the American seal with no legs lying on his doorstep covered in blood and dirt. He reacted horrifically. The farmer shouted something in Pashto. His wife appeared, then his teenage son, then his younger daughter. They gathered fearfully. They stared at Daniel like he was a ghost. The farmer made a decision. He chose firmly. He knelt down, checked Daniel's pulse, looked at the tourniquets, and picked up the legless American soldier. He lifted carefully. He carried Daniel inside and laid him on a mat. Then he sent his son running to the nearest Taliban checkpoint. He betrayed. He'd chosen his side. He'd chosen the Taliban. His wife had other plans. She decided differently. While her husband was outside talking with their son, giving directions to the Taliban checkpoint, the woman grabbed clean cloth, water, and a knife. She acted quickly. She knelt beside Daniel and started treating his wounds. She cleaned his stumps as best she could with limited supplies, wrapped them in fresh cotton bandages, and gave him water. She cared compassionately. Daniel drank desperately, his throat so dry he couldn't speak, couldn't thank her, couldn't ask why she was helping him. He drank gratefully. She understood anyway. She pointed to a small photograph on the wall, a young Afghan man in a police uniform. She showed sadly. Her brother, Daniel realized. Killed by the Taliban 3 years ago for working with Americans. She was repaying a debt. She was choosing mercy. And her choice was about to cost her everything. She sacrificed knowingly. The woman heard her husband coming back inside. She made a split-second decision that would haunt her forever. She chose quickly. She grabbed Daniel, all 190 pounds of him, and dragged him across the floor, through a back door, and into a small irrigation ditch behind the house. She moved frantically. She covered him with burlap sacks and dried crops. "Stay," she whispered in broken English. "Silent. They come. You silent," she commanded urgently. Her name was Amina. Daniel would never forget it. He remembered gratefully. She went back inside just as Taliban fighters arrived at the house. Daniel could hear everything from the irrigation ditch. He listened fearfully. Boots on the floor. Shouting in Pashto. The fighters were searching the house, demanding to know where the American was. They interrogated angrily. The farmer insisted he'd crawled off toward the mountains. The Taliban didn't believe him. They tore the house apart. Daniel heard furniture breaking, belongings thrown, the farmer's children crying. He heard horrifically. Then Boots came outside, crunching on gravel, walking past the irrigation ditch. One fighter stopped directly above Daniel. He positioned threateningly. If he looked down, if he moved the burlap, Daniel was dead. Daniel's hand rested on his pistol. 6 bullets left. He could take maybe 2 of them before they killed him, he calculated grimly. The fighter shifted his weight. Daniel's finger moved to the trigger. He prepared desperately. Then a voice shouted from inside the house. They'd found something, some evidence, some excuse to believe the farmer, they discovered. The fighter above Daniel ran back toward the house. After 20 minutes of searching and shouting, the Taliban left. They departed finally. But they left a message. They beat the farmer bloody, warning him that if they found out he'd lied, they'd kill his entire family. They threatened violently. The farmer had chosen the Taliban. His wife had chosen mercy. Both choices would have consequences. Amina came back to the irrigation ditch after the Taliban left. She brought more water, more bandages, and bread. She returned caringly. Daniel ate with shaking hands. His body trying desperately to replace what he'd lost, he consumed gratefully. Amina pointed toward the mountains, toward the American base, and held up 5 fingers, then 3 more. 8 miles still. Impossible. She shook her head. You die, her gesture said. Daniel nodded. Probably. But he had to try. He had to get home to Emma. He resolved determinedly. He crawled out of the irrigation ditch and looked at Amina one last time. Thank you, he whispered softly. She touched his face, a gesture of blessing or goodbye, and Daniel saw tears in her eyes. She cried sadly. She knew what helping him would cost her family. She did it anyway. She chose courageously. Daniel started crawling again. Hour 6. The sun was rising, which made Daniel visible, but also meant he could finally see the base. He observed hopefully. 2 miles away. So close. But his body was finished. Not struggling. Finished. He realized hopelessly. His right arm could barely pull anymore, the muscles torn and useless. His stumps were leaving continuous blood trails despite the bandages. The tourniquets had killed all tissue below them. His thighs were black with necrosis, dead meat that would kill him through sepsis if blood loss didn't kill him first, he assessed grimly. His heart rate was 70 BPM. Too slow. His blood pressure was probably 60/30. His vision kept fading to black for seconds at a time. He weakened critically. He was dying. Not in hours. Now. His body had nothing left to give. But his mind refused to quit. He persisted stubbornly. Emma's face. Her voice. Promise you'll come home, Daddy. Daniel kept crawling. 1 mile from base. Daniel couldn't crawl anymore. His arms wouldn't move. His body wouldn't obey. He stopped finally. He lay on the trail, face in the dirt, and waited to die. This was it. This was where the story ended. He realized sadly. 8 hours of crawling. 7 miles covered. 1 mile short. So close to keeping his promise to Emma. So close to seeing her 5th birthday, he thought regretfully. So close to teaching her to ride that pink bicycle. But close doesn't count. Dead is dead. Daniel's vision faded to black. His breathing stopped. His heart stopped. He died. Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Reeves died on that mountain trail at 0847 hours, 1 mile from safety, after the most impossible survival crawl in military history. Except he didn't stay dead. An American patrol found him 30 seconds after his heart stopped. They'd been searching for survivors from his team since the IED blast 9 hours ago. Following reports of gunfire and a blood trail, they searched desperately. They reached Daniel, checked for pulse, found nothing, and started CPR anyway because no SEAL is left behind. Ever, they vowed fiercely. They compressed his chest, forced air into his destroyed lungs, and shocked him with the defibrillator. They worked frantically. Once. Flatline. Twice. Flatline. Third time. His heart started. Weak, irregular, barely functional, but beating. It revived miraculously. They loaded him onto a stretcher and ran toward the landing zone. Calling for urgent medevac, they rushed desperately. The helicopter arrived in 3 minutes. They flew him to Bagram in 11 minutes. He was in surgery in 16 minutes. And in surgery, Daniel Reeves died again. Dr. James Mitchell had been a trauma surgeon for 23 years. Walter Reed, Johns Hopkins, Afghanistan for 4 tours. He worked extensively. He'd seen terrible injuries. But when they wheeled Daniel into his operating room, he actually stepped back in shock and said out loud, "Jesus Christ, he's still alive." He reacted in disbelief. No legs from mid-thigh down. Both tourniquets black with dead tissue. Broken arm bent at angles that weren't natural, he observed horrifically. Shredded muscles exposing bone throughout his body. 7 pounds of dirt and gravel embedded in his wounds. Blood pressure unmeasurable. Heart rate 45. Oxygen saturation 55%. Dr. Mitchell looked at his surgical team and spoke the truth. This man is clinically dead. We're operating on a corpse that doesn't know it yet, he said grimly. Then he started surgery anyway. He operated determinedly. They cleaned the wounds, debrided the dead tissue, amputated both legs 6 inches higher because the tourniquets had killed everything below. They worked extensively. They removed gravel piece by piece. They set his broken arm with pins. They transfused 14 units of blood, Daniel's entire blood volume plus 4 extra units. They replaced frantically. They worked for 5 hours. And at hour 3, Daniel's heart stopped. Asystole. Complete flatline. No electrical activity. Brain death imminent. He died critically. Dr. Mitchell started compressions while nurses pushed drugs. They worked desperately. They shocked him once. Nothing. Twice. Nothing. 3 times. Still nothing. 4 minutes of death. 5 minutes. 6 minutes. He remained dead. Dr. Mitchell was about to call time of death when Daniel's heart started on its own. It revived miraculously. No drugs brought him back. No shock restarted it. It just started beating again. As if his heart had taken a 6-minute break and decided it wasn't done yet. It persisted impossibly. Dr. Mitchell looked at his team with tears in his eyes. I've never seen that. In 23 years, I've never seen that, he cried emotionally. Daniel woke up 4 days later in Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, D.C. He'd been medevaced unconscious from Afghanistan to Germany to the United States. He traveled unconsciously. His first words were Emma. Where's Emma? He asked desperately. The nurse smiled. Your daughter's here, Senior Chief. Your whole family's here, she said warmly. They brought Emma in. She was carrying a drawing she'd made. A stick figure soldier with no legs, but with a huge smile and the words, Daddy came home, in crayon, she showed lovingly. Emma climbed carefully onto Daniel's hospital bed, avoided all the tubes and wires, and hugged him. She embraced gently. You promised, she whispered softly. I knew you'd keep your promise. Daniel held his daughter with his one good arm and cried. He sobbed emotionally. Not from pain. From the impossibility of being here. From being alive when he should be dead 3 times over. From keeping his promise. He cried gratefully. The next 2 years were harder than the crawl. Physical therapy was torture that made the mountain crawl look easy. He struggled intensely. Learning to use prosthetic legs was humiliating. Daniel fell 127 times in the first month. Learning to walk again at age 34 when he'd been an elite athlete who could run a 6-minute mile made him want to quit. He despaired. But Emma's drawing was taped to his hospital wall. Daddy came home. He'd come home. Now he had to figure out what coming home meant. He resolved. 6 months after the explosion, Daniel took his first steps on prosthetic legs. They were terrible steps, awkward and painful. But they were steps. He achieved proudly. Sarah and Emma cried watching him walk. They wept joyfully. Daniel smiled. I crawled 7 miles through Afghanistan. I can figure out how to walk across this room, he said confidently. A year after the explosion, Daniel was jogging. 18 months after, he was running. And 20 months after losing both legs in an IED blast, Daniel Reeves entered his first marathon. He competed bravely. He finished in 5 hours and 47 minutes, dead last, hours behind the winner. His prosthetics had rubbed his stumps raw. His broken arm ached. His entire body screamed. He suffered intensely, but he finished. And at the finish line, Emma was waiting with a sign, My daddy is faster than your daddy. She cheered enthusiastically. Daniel picked her up and spun her around. He celebrated joyfully. Not yet, princess. But I will be. I promise, he vowed. Emma laughed. You always keep your promises, Daddy, she said happily. 2 years and 4 months after the explosion, Daniel qualified for the U.S. Paralympic team. His event, 1,500-meter wheelchair race, he achieved remarkably. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the most talented. But he was the most stubborn human being his coaches had ever met, they observed. He trained 7 hours a day, every single day, pushing his wheelchair until his arms gave out. Then pushing more, he trained relentlessly. His stumps bled through his padding. His hands developed calluses on top of calluses. His shoulders were in constant pain. He suffered continuously. His coaches begged him to rest. Daniel never rested. He refused stubbornly. Rest was for people who hadn't crawled 7 miles through enemy territory with no legs. Rest was for people who didn't know what impossible meant. Rest was for people who broke promises, he reasoned. 3 years and 2 months after the explosion, Tokyo Paralympics. Daniel Reeves, former Navy SEAL senior chief, double amputee, lined up for the 1,500-meter wheelchair race final. He competed finally. 8 competitors. All of them had faster qualifying times. All of them were favored over Daniel. They led statistically. The commentators barely mentioned him. The other athletes ignored him. But in the stands, Emma was holding a sign. "Go Daddy Go," she cheered excitedly. And in the athletes section, Daniel's old SEAL team sat together. Rodriguez, Wilson, Morrison, all of them wearing Navy SEAL shirts. All of them crying before the race even started because they knew what it took to get Daniel here. They wept proudly. The gun fired. The race began. Daniel pushed his wheelchair with military precision, each stroke powerful and controlled. He raced strategically. First lap, he was in 7th place. Second lap, 6th. Third lap, 5th. By lap 4, he'd moved into 4th place. He advanced steadily. The leaders were pulling away. They were faster, their technique better. Daniel was 30 meters behind with 2 laps remaining. He lagged. The commentators wrote him off. Medaling was impossible. The gap was too large, they dismissed. But Daniel didn't care about impossible. Impossible was crawling 7 miles with no legs while bleeding out. Impossible was dying 3 times and coming back. This was just a race. He reasoned determinedly. He pushed harder. Lap 5, he passed 3rd place. 30 meters behind the leaders. 1 lap to go. Daniel pushed with everything he had. Every ounce of strength he'd built over 3 years of brutal training. He strained intensely. 20 meters. 15. The crowd was screaming. They roared excitedly. 10 meters behind with 200 meters of track remaining. Daniel's arms were on fire. His shoulders screaming. He suffered agonizingly. He pushed through it. 5 meters behind with 100 meters to go. The second-place racer looked back, saw Daniel coming, and panicked. He faltered. His rhythm broke. Daniel didn't have rhythm anymore. He only had will. He persisted fiercely. He passed 2nd place with 50 meters remaining. The leader was 5 meters ahead. He pursued desperately. Daniel pushed. 3 meters. 2 meters. The crowd was roaring. Emma was screaming. His SEAL team was on their feet. They cheered frantically. 1 meter. They crossed the finish line simultaneously. Photo finish. The crowd held its breath. They waited tensely. The judges reviewed the footage. Frame by frame. Millisecond by millisecond. The results flashed on the screen. Gold medal. Daniel Reeves. USA. By 7/1000ths of a second, he won impossibly. Daniel rolled across the finish line and collapsed out of his wheelchair onto the track. He didn't cry. He sobbed. Body-shaking sobs that came from 3 years of pain and impossible effort and promises kept. He cried overwhelmingly. Emma ran onto the track and threw herself onto her father. "You won, Daddy. You won," she shouted joyfully. Sarah was there too, holding both of them. She embraced lovingly. Rodriguez and Wilson and Morrison were there, all of them crying, all of them knowing what this meant. They wept proudly. The other athletes came over one by one to shake Daniel's hand, to acknowledge what they'd just witnessed. They honored respectfully. During the medal ceremony, they raised the American flag while the national anthem played. It played triumphantly. Daniel stood at attention on his prosthetic legs, Emma holding his hand, and cried through the entire anthem. He wept patriotically. Everyone in the stadium was crying. Everyone knew his story by now. The SEAL who crawled 7 miles with no legs and survived to win Olympic gold. After the ceremony, a reporter asked Daniel the question everyone wanted answered. "How did you do it? How did you survive the crawl? How did you win today?" he asked curiously. Daniel thought for a long moment. Then he looked at Emma and said, "I made a promise to my daughter. I told her I'd come home. On that mountain, with no legs and bleeding out, I kept crawling because I don't break promises to my little girl," he explained passionately. In physical therapy, when I wanted to quit, I kept going because I'd promised her I'd walk again. In training, when my body was destroyed and screaming at me to stop, I kept pushing because I'd promised her I'd race. And today, when I was behind and everyone said I couldn't catch up, I retry be continuously harder because I'd promised her I'd win. I don't break promises. Not to my daughter. Not to my team. Not to myself. That's the only secret. Keep your promises no matter what, he said powerfully. 5 years after the explosion, Daniel Reeves returned to Afghanistan. Not as a soldier, but as a civilian. Invited by the U.S. military to speak to troops about resilience, he returned purposefully. He stood on a stage at Bagram Airfield, the same base where he'd died twice and been brought back twice, and told his story. He spoke emotionally. But this time, he told them something he'd kept private for 5 years. I need to tell you about Amina, Daniel said seriously. The room went silent. They listened intently. She was the Afghan woman who hid me from the Taliban. She saved my life when doing so put her entire family in danger. Her husband was beaten by the Taliban for not turning me in fast enough, he explained gravely. 2 years after I left Afghanistan, the Taliban came back to their village. They killed her husband for helping me. They burned her house. They threatened to kill her children if she didn't leave the country, he said sadly. Daniel paused, his voice cracking with emotion. I brought Amina to America. She has citizenship now. She has a home. Her children are in school, he announced proudly. Because she saved my life when every rational reason said to let me die. She chose mercy over fear. She chose compassion over survival. She chose to see an enemy soldier as a human being. And that choice cost her husband his life. That choice destroyed her family. That choice made her a refugee, he said emotionally. But that choice also made everything else possible. Without Amina, I don't crawl to base. I don't survive surgery. I don't learn to walk. I don't win gold. I don't keep my promise to Emma. Amina saved me, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring her sacrifice, he vowed solemnly. The soldiers gave Amina a standing ovation. She was in the audience, crying, her children beside her. She wept gratefully. After the speech, Emma walked up to Amina and handed her something. The gold medal from Tokyo, she offered generously. My daddy says you saved him. That means you saved me too. I want you to have this, she said lovingly. Amina tried to refuse, but Emma insisted. You gave me my daddy back. This is the least I can give you, she explained sweetly. Amina held the gold medal and sobbed. She cried overwhelmingly. 2 women, one Afghan, one American, one who'd saved a life, one who'd gotten her father back, hugging and crying while soldiers and civilians watched and understood that the real victory wasn't the medal. It was the mercy that made the medal possible. They realized profoundly. This is the true story of Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Reeves. The man who lost both legs and crawled 7 miles through enemy territory while bleeding out. The man who tied tourniquets with his teeth. The man who left a blood trail that Taliban fighters followed for 8 hours. He survived impossibly. The man who fought enemies while crawling. The man who was saved by an Afghan woman who lost everything to show him mercy. He was rescued mercifully. The man who died 3 times and came back 3 times. The man who kept his promise to his daughter. He succeeded triumphantly. The man who became an Olympic gold champion. The man who proved that promises are stronger than pain, that will is stronger than body, that impossible is just a word people use before someone proves them wrong. He demonstrated powerfully. If this story moved you, hit subscribe right now, he urged enthusiastically. Share this with someone who needs to hear that promises matter, that impossible isn't real, that mercy changes everything. Comment below about a promise you're keeping no matter what, he encouraged. And remember, the next time life takes your legs, literally or figuratively, remember Daniel Reeves crawling 7 miles to keep a promise to his daughter. Remember Amina risking everything to show mercy to an enemy he inspired passionately. Remember that forward is the only direction that matters, whether you walk it, run it, or crawl it. Because you will reach your finish line. The only question is whether you'll keep crawling when everyone says to quit, he challenged powerfully. Stay strong, keep your promises, and never stop moving forward, he concluded triumphantly.